Thirsty for action? Let's crack open the Sunday Six-Pack.
All right, so good week for us, 34-30, close race. You, sir, are up first in week number 10. Where are you going?
All right, for my first pick of the week 10 Sunday Six-Pack, I'm going with the Houston Texans +7, -115 is out there. It doesn't matter for this contest, pushes or losses, but I would look for the 7, obviously a key number. -115 is fine, which is out there. This number has come down a bit. There's questions about Jamar Chase and his availability. I think he'll probably give it a go. He might not be at 100%, and that back could flare up at any time. That was another thing that killed the over last week. And if Burrow just let him, he would walk in for a touchdown. Instead, he gets hurt. Talk about a massive swing there. But this is on paper just, number one, it's a bad spot for the Bengals. They come off that big win against Buffalo. They have Baltimore on deck. And now you're hosting Houston. So it could be maybe a little bit sleepy here. But more importantly, I just think this Houston offense and CJ Stroud are undervalued in the market. This offense, when they actually come out and throw it, like looking back at that Panthers game, I don't know what they're doing. They can't run the ball. I think if you go by DVOA, they're 31st in rush offense, 3rd in pass offense. I mean, CJ Stroud is amazing. Tank Dell is amazing. This offense can tear up any secondary, including this Bengals. I mean, look, the Bengals defense, I think, is one of the more, they have a great coordinator, but it's one of the more overrated units in the NFL. I don't love their secondary. Their safeties have taken a massive step back after last season. And if you remember last season, they faced about 10 backup quarterbacks throughout the division and just throughout the entire season. Almost lost to a backup quarterback in the playoffs. And this season, they have been extremely fortunate on defense, especially in the red zone. Go back the last 3 weeks against the 49ers. They give up 460 yards to the 49ers. You had a McCaffrey fumble inside the 10. When's that ever happened? You had that fluky defensive lineman pick. Go back to the Seattle game. They're in the red zone the entire game. Outgained Cincy by 200 yards. They couldn't punch it in the end zone. And then last week, you have another fumble in the red zone. I mean, this is happening all year. If you look at the Bengals from a pure metrics standpoint, their defense, middle of the road. If you remove turnovers, 25th EPA per play, 23rd dropback EPA. This defense is vulnerable. They've been getting away with it because of turnovers and failed red zone execution. I think that there's some major regression coming, and this is the perfect offense to come in here and do it. Chase being banged up will only hurt the Texans. And look, if the Texans come out and try to run it, I hope not. I hope that Bobby Slovic has learned his lesson. And they get behind, that's fine for this game script. Like, they can keep up. And then that's when Cincy gets too conservative when they're up and they start running it too much. So even if they get behind early, because look, the Bengals offense is bad. Burrow is all the way back. I think if you look, yards over replacement adjusted for defense over the first, 6 weeks, Burrow 2 total yards over replacement level quarterback. Week 8, 194. Week 9, 165. So Burrow's all the way back. This Bengals offense should be able to put up points. But Chase not being 100% healthy will definitely hurt. And this is a bad spot. And I don't think the Texans offense is getting enough respect. Throw in the looming Bengals regression on defense. And I think that the Texans can keep this within a score. Wouldn't even be shocked if they gave the Bengals a scare or pulled off this upset. And let's go with the Houston Texans and CJ Stroud, who's having one of the greatest rookie seasons of all time for any quarterback statistically. So give me the Texans.
Yeah, love the Texans. CJ Stroud is just, it's other, like, his upside now is it's growing. Like, I'm not gonna say Mahomes because he's in a different planet, but it's like that next tier, like that, his upside is already there. Like what he did in that game against the Bucs. I mean, the pinpoint throws, like the throwing with anticipation, the accuracy. I mean, it was just like the clutchness, not having a kicker. I mean, Jesus, this guy.
Yeah, he can make all the throws. And Tank Dell, by the way, he's got future. He's got
my
future
guy.
All-Pro. I loved him in college. I loved Tank Dell at Houston. He's got future All-Pro potential.
Oh yeah, like I remember for fantasy flex, I saw the first Texan preseason game, and Dell was playing a ton in the first half, or maybe it was the second game, one of the two. But the first time he played, and I was like, this dude is already the best receiver on the Texans, and like you're just seeing that play out. Because as much credit as we got to give to Stroud, Tank Dell got open on that sideline route to get him that long gain to get him in scoring position, and he split two defenders in the end of like that. So like that doesn't happen without Tank Dell as well. But I think what you're seeing with Stroud too is he's just star quarterbacks make all the receivers look like stars, and I think Dell is a star. But look at Nico now. Nico is he's always solid, but now he's putting up top 20 fantasy numbers. Noah Brown had 150-yard game. I mean, Dalton Schultz had more yards than he ever had on Dallas. I mean, this is one of the few offenses that can go toe to toe with the healthy Bengals team. And maybe they're not healthy, like you said, because Jamar Chase.
Yeah, and by the way, people are like, the right call was not kicking that extra point. You don't have a kicker, you can't allow a return. Yeah. But people forget that, and I had to watch the Eagles recover all 3 fumbles in their own territory. But the Texans had 3 guys around a fumble to end the game, and they didn't get it, and it somehow bounced right to Mike Evans. And then it wouldn't have mattered if they went down and scored. So that's what made it even more brutal. But yeah, I like the Texans here. Where are you going first?
So haven't done this much this year, but we are going back to the New England Patriots +1.5 in, where is it? London? In London against the Indianapolis Colts. And I think this is a great matchup for the Patriots. There's not many because this is a bad team. But the Indianapolis Colts defensively, let's look at what they do.
I think it's in Frankfurt, by the way. Not that.
Oh, sorry. I said London. Yeah, Frankfurt. NFL International Series. It'll be on 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. No, yeah. So bright and early. But Indianapolis on defense, we know what they do. Gus Bradley defense. They play the most zone in the entire NFL. Well, New England, we know their passing game isn't great. Your receiving core isn't great, although Douglas is starting to come on a little bit. But New England dead last in adjusted yards per attempt versus man coverage, as you would expect. But versus zone coverage, they're above average. They're actually 13th, about 3 more yards per against zone than against man. And the Colts, more than any other team, are almost guaranteed not to switch up their scheme. They just don't do it. They just sit back. They don't really blitz. They just play zone coverage. They've done it over 80% of the time this year. It's just what they do.
89% zone. They're in cover 3, 50% league high. Cover 4, 24%. Cover 6, which is a mix of those. So the 89, man 11, that's the same exact splits as the Panthers. And those are the 2 highest. There's just no man. Vikings kind of the same way. There's just no man defense at all.
Yeah. And, well, why is this even better? Because not only is it a good matchup for the New England offense, and I tread lightly, good matchup, but New England's also seen the second most man coverage this year, from other defenses. So you're getting value in the sense that New England's offensive numbers are coming against, a much higher rate of man coverage than the league average. And that makes sense because, that's the way you play New England. But we know Gus Bradley just doesn't do that. Like they're gonna play their scheme, and especially coming off a really good game in their scheme against Bryce Young last week. So like the matchup there. And then also New England, Indianapolis defense been pretty solid, been about league average overall in terms of the numbers, but 23rd in run defense DVOA. So you let New England run the ball a little bit too. So this is a great matchup for New England's offense, which you don't really get much of that, this year with what's going on with this team. And then on the other side, you have a quarterback in Gardner Minshew, one of the few quarterbacks that is more likely than Mac Jones to have a negative play. Gardner Minshew's 6.3% turnover worthy play rate, third in the league. Mac Jones is 5.2%, so he's fifth. So you have one of the few quarterbacks that's that's more turnover prone than Mac Jones, even though not all the turnovers are Jones' fault. But and then you have the New England defense, sixth in EPA per rush, third in rush success rate, and on early downs, they're fourth in EPA per rush and second in early down rush success rate. So this New England defense can still stop the run, which is what the Colts are going to lean on with Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss. And they had, like you said, they had under 200 yards of offense last week. They couldn't run the ball on the Panthers, which was, I think, pretty concerning for their offense. So, fading Gardner Minshew here in this Colt offense. Minshew's 4-15 against the spread in his last 19 starts. Again, another quarterback that's been, just as bad or worse than Mac Jones, because, I know I talked about Jones's record against the spread last week when we faded the Pats with Washington. But yeah, love the matchup for New England. So neutral field, no home field for the Colts. This is close to a coin flip game for me. I'll take the 1.5.
Yeah, don't hate it. I'll have something on this game later. For my second pick and the third overall, the Week 10 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Anything 3 or above is fine. 3.5 minus 115 minus 120 are out there as when we're doing this. I would pay for that because there's a good chance that this game could land on a field goal. I actually had the Packers rated ahead of the Steelers in my power ratings. Throwing home field, I have the Steelers as a small favorite. Getting a field goal or above in this matchup, I have to take it. Look, the Steelers, I don't really think should be a field goal favorite over anybody in the league that is not named the New York Giants right now. I know they have 5 wins on the season. They are number 1 in our luck rankings. I'll shout out to Nick Giffen and company for Kerner for our luck rankings. And it's a really good tool just to kind of sum up a picture of everything that I look at as far as which teams are getting lucky, which teams might be over or underinflated in the market. Talked about Cincinnati. Talk about the Eagles. The Eagles, I think, are number 2 now in the luck rankings, 2 or 3. Steelers are number 1. Going away. I mean, this team, based on how they perform, should have 2 wins. They have 35% win. Their win percentage is 35% higher than how they've performed. And look, some of the other advanced metrics, you'll see the Steelers a bit higher than the Packers. That's because their schedule's been tough. But like the getting multiple defensive touchdowns against the Browns, these things are not sustainable. The Ravens having 1 million drops and Lamar just throwing it to the end zone. I mean, it is insane the breaks the Steelers team has gotten. They are 5-0 in 1-score games, expected wins of 2. And if you go back to 2020 and 2021, interestingly enough, the Steelers were 13-3 combined, number 1 in our luck rankings at that point. And people are like, oh, it's a Steelers and a Tomlin thing. Well, then they would win every game and win every Super Bowl. They finished 8-1 after that point against a softish schedule too. Packers, on the other hand, they're 30th in those luck rankings, 1-3 in 1-score games. They have 3 losses by a combined 7 points. Aaron Jones back to full health. He should get a full workload now from everything that I've read. This Steelers offense is still an absolute disaster. 47% of their possessions go 3 and out. 47. That's outrageous. I think the next worst team, and the Packers are bad too, but they're like 37%. Just to illustrate how bad the Steelers offense actually is, they have 1 play. They just try to throw it down the sidelines to Pickens. Johnson being back helps a little bit, but it's still Kenny Pickett laying over field goal. I bought to 3.5 minus 115. Absolutely no-brainer play for me with Green Bay. This is also a classic Tomlin non-spot where his teams come out a little flat and against a team under 500. But I make this round 1, so I'm happily took 3.5 minus 115 with the Packers against a Steelers team that has just a ton of regression coming its way.
Yeah, I was thinking about this because I agree. This is just another example of these bad quarterbacks. And you could say there's bad quarterbacks on both sides. I mean, depending on how I know Jordan Love hasn't exactly lit it up, but
they're basically like equal quarterbacks, like equal defenses. Packers probably a little better offensive line, a little better running back. Like Steelers maybe a little better wide receivers. These teams are so equal. And I actually have the Packers a smidge ahead. So getting over a field goal at 3.5 in a game that could be ugly. And look, the Packers have been awful in the first halves. Didn't bite them last week because guess what? They were playing the Rams and Brett Rippon. If they get off to a slow start here, it won't bite them either. They're playing Kenny Pickett, right? So you can survive a slow start if that's the case. But yeah, give me Green Bay.
Yeah, and this is, again, Kenny Pickett getting, laying 3.5, at some spots. I mean, we're not saying that, Jordan Love and his Packer team is amazing, or it's just, you can't just look at these lines and say, okay, well, the Steelers are at home field advantage, that they're the right side. Like, no, like just take these opportunities to fade these quarterbacks when, they're laying, points, like a field goal or more at home, anything on the road. I mean, we'll talk about, a lot of there's some quarterbacks, bad quarterbacks laying points on the road. So it's just, it's been a wild year. I mean, just so many backup quarterbacks, and it's like backups are getting hurt, and backups are coming in. So speaking of which, for my second pick of the week 10 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings plus 2.5 at home against the New Orleans Saints. And, both of these teams are 5-4, kind of surprising based on the way Minnesota started the year. But, even with Josh Dobbs, who, by the way, played amazingly last week, but I think
with no prep, never took a snap. Wow, amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, some of his scrambles, like, it was like, I haven't seen Michael Vick make some, like, as good a plays as some of those scrambles. Like the one where he just, like, flew across the first down marker on 3rd and, like, 20 or something. Like, I mean, it was nuts. But that is going, I think that's going to be a problem for the Saints, because the Saints have allowed the second most rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks. So that is one of the ways you beat them, because the Saints like to play man coverage, and that their outside corners are pretty good. So you have to, kind of, their backs are going to be turned. That's where you can get yardage, on the ground. You could go over the middle. So it's important to have a guy like Hawkinson as well. But when I look at these teams, I think it's time to fade New Orleans, because look at New Orleans' schedule this year, and then compare it to Minnesota, and look at who New Orleans beat. New Orleans beat Carolina. They lost to Green Bay by a point. They beat the Titans by a point, and Ryan Tannehill is probably one of the worst games, if not the worst game he's ever played. They beat the Panthers by 3, just 3.
Titans also had a defensive touchdown that wasn't called in that game.
Yep. They get the Patriots at the right time, so they blow them out. They beat the Colts, who we just talked about, not a very good team. And then they beat the Tyson Bagent Bears. So they beat Tyson Bagent, Gardner Minshew, Mac Jones, Bryce Young, and Ryan Tannehill. So, but then you look at,
by the way, they have Falcons, Panthers, Giants, Rams coming up.
Yep, like this, it's going to be very interesting. Yeah, I mean, we talked about like this whole division schedule is super easy, but this team, lost to the Green Bay Packers, lost to the Bucs by 17. They lose to the Texans, which doesn't look as bad anymore. But you look at this team on the road, and like this. I think this is where they're going to get into trouble, because Derek Carr in his career on the road, coming off a win, 11-22 against the spread, 1-8 as a favorite. Dennis Allen as a favorite, 5-14-1 against the spread, 26%. So I already think it's a letdown spot for the Saints. But let's look at what happened last week. They got outgained 368 to 301 by the Tyson Bagent-led Bears. They've been getting super lucky with turnovers in every game. And we know the Vikings have been one of the most unlucky teams with turnovers. So, even last week, I mean, Dobbs, safety, it's like 3 turnovers the minute he comes in the game. So, I think there's going to be some regression there. And you look at you look at Derek Carr versus the Blitz, and Flores has his defense playing well. Like everyone talks about the Saints defense. They're 9th in DVOA. You know who's 10th? The Minnesota Vikings. So these teams are pretty much equal on defense. And Carr outside the top 20 against the Blitz. He's 23rd in passer rating, 24th in PFF grade against the Blitz. That's what we know Flores is going to do. And a lot of these Saints losses this year have come against teams that blitz Derek Carr. And, the games they've had the most success against, like look at the Colts, they put up 500 yards of offense on the Colts because the Colts just sit back and don't blitz. And so I think the Saints team, is something of a paper tiger here. And I look at this Minnesota team and look who they played. And I know, there's a lot of different players, obviously Cousins is not here, but Minnesota played Philadelphia, the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Niners, who they beat. It's really a tale of two schedules for these two teams. So for the Vikings to be playing this well on defense, they're at home. I think these teams are a lot more evenly matched than even with Dobbs at quarterback and without Jefferson, who practice window should open this week, but I don't expect them back. But give me the Vikings here. Time to fade this Saints team that's just been beaten up on bad teams that play right into what they do. I don't think Derek Carr has been very good. I think he's just had some defenses that they can do some things against. I don't think this is going to be one of them.
Yeah, I got to give a ton of credit to Brian Flores, what he's done with his defense. Just the lack of coverage ability that they have on the outside. They're not playing any man. It is, a lot, almost half cover 3, a lot of drop. They'll drop 8 sometimes, and then they're bringing the blitz a ton. So he's able to generate pressure. They're taking away explosive plays. They have deep safeties all the time. They're making you earn it and moving up and down the field. And then he's coming with timely blitzes, creating negative plays. Danielle Hunter's been awesome. So, yeah, Flores deserves a ton of credit what he's done with this unit. Just on scheme alone, it's a night and day difference, and it shows you what one coordinator hire can do for an entire unit. We're seeing it with the Ravens offense now, right? Like, look how stale that offense got last year. Now that offense is a rocket ship. And last year, this Vikings defense was a train wreck, and they got worse. They got rid of talent, and now just scheme alone. So, yeah, I'm sure you're going to get a million Carr checkdowns against this type of defense. So I don't know how many catches you have projected for Kamara. He's going to have one of those 13 catches for 35-yard games. I
mean, they used him a lot less last week too. He was having some trouble against the Bears, but it's either that or Carr just going to throw a bunch of balls out of bounds on the sidelines to Olave, who's going to look back at him like, why are you even throwing it to me? Yeah. So
I agree on this one. More on it in later on in a segment in the podcast. But for my third pick and the 5th overall, the Week 10 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going, let's get fun here. I'm going with the Dallas Cowboys, 16.5, minus 16.5 at home against the New York Giants. I think I've always said I'll never lay over 2 touchdowns in the NFL. What do they say? Never say never, because I have. I bet the Cowboys, I bet them. I think I'd still bet them at 17, but try to get under 17. I project this at 19.4. Now, there's a lot of variance in that number. Like, how bad can you make Tommy DeVito? But bad is the answer. It's very, very bad. He's the worst quarterback I've ever tried to price. The one exception was when Kendall Hilton, the wide receiver for the Broncos, had to start during COVID. I think they were 17-point underdogs. By the way, this number, go back a couple weeks when I bet the Giants, catching 14.5 against a bottom 5 Bills defense after injuries with Tyrod Taylor. Now you have Tommy DeVito, massive, massive, monumental drop-off with against the top 5 defense, and you're in the same similar price range. This line's outrageous. The Cowboys offense is on fire right now. Talked about this last week. They're doing everything that I've wanted them to do. Dak's using his legs. They're throwing more on first downs. Ferguson's implementation of the offense. They're just a machine. Right? Offensive line is now fully healthy. There's just nothing the Giants can do to slow them down. And on the other side of the ball, what are the Giants? What are the Giants going to do to score? They already lost 38-0 to this team, by the way. What are they going to do? I don't know. Tommy DeVito is going to be under fire. He's going to throw picks. The Dallas Cowboys are just going to play man on the outside. And by the way, the Dallas Cowboys defense also trading up. Deron Bland, who's been great at corner. Marquise Bell at linebacker. They figured it out after the loss of Diggs. I just don't know how the team total for the Giants is 10.5. I'd take the under. 10.5. You never see a team total alone in the NFL. This Giants team lost 30. There's one data point, but last week against a bottom 5 defense that lets you do anything, right? Just no pressure. You can have your efficiency. They lost 30-6 to the Raiders, and Aiden O'Connell at quarterback. 30-6. Cowboys, by the way, have 17+ point wins already this year against the Jets, Patriots, and Rams. So when they get a bad team and that offense is rolling, they blow them out because then the defense can pin its ears back, go after the quarterback. I don't know. You get an angry Cowboys team. There's no look ahead. They had the Panthers on deck. I just, number one, I don't know how the Giants score. Barkley's got to break a run. That's it. He's got to break an 80-yard run. And I don't know how the Giants slow down this Cowboys offense, which is rolling. Like the Cowboys are going to have to fumble multiple kicks, fumble punts. Brandon Aubrey's going to have to remember he's a soccer player. I just don't know. I can't find a path where this isn't a complete blowout. This has 35-3 written all over it. Give me the Cowboys. I think it's the first time in my life I've laid over 2 touchdowns in the NFL, and I have no hesitation. It doesn't cover, I don't care. I'm fading Tommy DeVito. Guy couldn't play. Guy had to transfer out of Syracuse. Couldn't start at Syracuse. Give me the Cowboys. They better score in the red zone, by the way. They got some regression coming. They're going to be able to finish off every single drive this week with 6.
Dak, when favored by 6 or more in his career, 27-11 against the spread, 71%, 3-1 against the spread this year. That is outrageous. You usually don't see trends for favorites, 70% over that big of a sample size. So
usually if you go back, it makes sense in a sense that the Cowboys always have had, good pass rush, good, decent secondary. So when they get up against a bad team, right, then that's when their defense, if they're in a close game or behind and teams are able to run the ball against them. But if they get up and they build a big lead, then it usually snowballs because that's when their defense is even better. And now you have that scenario against Tommy DeVito. Come on. They had negative pass yards against the Jets defense. Negative pass yards.
Speaking of which, that'll take me to my third pick and the final one of the Week 10 Sunday 6-pack, and I am going with the Las Vegas Raiders +1 at home against the New York Jets, and gotta fade Zach Wilson laying points on the road here. And this Jet team, I think it's gonna keep the bottom's gonna keep falling out here. I know their defense is great, but let's look, 2 weeks ago, they play the Giants, and you mentioned it. They hold the Giants to -9 passing yards. -9 passing yards. They need a comeback 2-minute drive with the clock running down just to tie it and then to win in overtime. When you hold the team to -9 passing yards.
Or kick a field goal. Like the Giants should have won that game. Giants 99.9% win probability.
And so let's now compare that. The Jets had a 0.1% win probability against the Giants at one point in the game with -9 passing yards. The Raiders beat this team 30-6. So not good. Same thing. And look at O'Connell also started against the Chargers. He was on the goal line and had a chance to tie the game. And, they called pass play and it ended up getting picked up. But even it took 9-10 sacks. They were right in that game with a chance to tie late. The Jets can't even sniff the end zone against the Chargers. 27-6. So you already have a couple of common opponents, to kind of judge this off of, even though, O'Connell's only started a couple games, both of those starts have come against teams the Jets have also played, and the Raiders have looked better against those teams. The Jets offensive line is terrible right now. It's just all banged up. Max Crosby's going to get off. And, the Jets' strength obviously is their defense, their pass defense. But at least you have, Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. So, it's like you don't have, like, you have guys that can at least give you a chance, especially Adams against these cornerbacks. So, just two bad teams. But the Raiders, I think it's also going to be tough for the Jets to game plan, because you're in game 2 of this Antonio Pierce regime. They changed the offensive coordinator. So, it's going to be really tough for the Jets. And also another reason I think the Jets are a little bit overvalued and why they're favored on the road with Zach Wilson, they've only played 2 road games. This is just going to be their 3rd road game, because they had a road game that was the Giants, but that's their stadium too. So that's not really a road game. So the only road games the Jets have had, week 2 at Dallas and week 5 at the Broncos. So you look at all the Jets stats and, as you're kind of handicapping this, they played 8 games and they've only had 2 road games. So, we know teams play worse on the road. They're going across the country. Raiders chilling, 2nd straight home game. They had the Giants come in last week. They're riding high. So I think the Raiders can keep it going here and do enough to beat this Jet team. And this is when you want to fade Zach Wilson, when he is a favorite or an underdog of less than 6 points. So if he's plus 5.5 or less, or he's a favorite, he's just 6-1 against the spread in his last 8. The times the Jets are covering are when they're 1 possession or more dogs, and their defense kind of keeps them in it, or they get lucky, like with the Eagles. But in these spots, this is a fade all the way. We saw this Jet team just continue to struggle to score points at the end of last year with Zach Wilson, and it's starting to happen again. It seems like the deeper you get into the season, the more tape you get, this offense just doesn't have answers. And it sounds like Saleh doesn't even really want to stay. It sounds like this is more of an ownership decision at this point. I don't even know. Like, he's like, they're not calling up Simeon, even though he's there. So I don't see this offense doing much, and that's going to give the Raiders a chance here at home, because a Zach Wilson led Jet offense can be just as bad as a O'Connell offense facing the Jets. So give me the Raiders +1.
Yeah, I mean, fading Zach Wilson is a favorite. Yeah, one thing I would worry about is this Breece Hall going off. That's the only time the Jets offense looks competent. But the way to move the ball against this Raiders defense, I talked about it. They sit back and they don't. All they want to do is take away explosive plays, and it works for the most part in today's NFL. Keeps you in the game. But if you can efficiently pass the ball down the field, you can move the ball against this secondary. But that's not what the Jets can do. Zach Wilson isn't accurate enough. Max Crosby will end up stripping him a couple times. Marcus Peters will probably have a pick 6 when Zach Wilson doesn't, when he just telegraphs the throw to the sidelines. That's what happens, right? You make a bad quarterback drive all the way down the field, and then they make a mistake. So yeah. And for what it's worth, I know coming into the season, I'll have to check this. Is this a primetime game? God damn it. Yep. Zach Wilson in primetime twice in 6 days. So one of us will have this game written up. I'll probably give this to you. I'll take Bills, Broncos. But I know coming into this year, you can check this. But coming into this season, see if my memory is good. Teams going from the East Coast teams going to the West Coast after a primetime game on a short week doesn't happen often. So Jets played Monday night, going now short week going across the country. 8-16 against the spread over the past 20 years. So it's something with the body clock, and obviously short week doesn't help. But yeah, I think the Raiders are rejuvenated. How can you not be after getting rid of maybe the worst coach in the NFL? So don't disagree. Who do we got for quarterbacks?
Woo! We have, let's see. Okay, so you got CJ Stroud, good. Jordan Love, Dak Prescott, solid. So you got some decent quarterbacks. I got Mac Jones, Josh Dobbs, and Aiden O'Connell, baby. Second week in a row. I'm out uglying you.
Yeah, we've switched roles here the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, man. Hey, I mean, it's been one of those years, it's like I said it, it's just kind of, I mean, it's a lot of it is just fading bad quarterbacks getting points, or laying points. So fading Zach Wilson, fading Carr, and fading Minshew. So, equally bad on the other side of it. But you got Stuck has Houston +7, Pack +3, Cowboys -16.5. I have Pats +1.5, Vikes +2.5, and the Raiders +1. That's going to wrap it up for our Week 10 Sunday 6-pack.